Welcome to Mentoring Moments. Mentoring Moments is a sub-series of the E-commerce Edge podcast. It is composed of clips taken from Jason's one-to-one and group mentorship sessions.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the pod. It is my absolute pleasure to welcome our next incredible guest, Miss Lynsey Sweales. Welcome to the podcast, Lynsey.
Thank you, Jason, and well done on getting my surname spelt right. So many people pronounce it incorrectly. So first dibs to you. Well done.
Thank you very much. I think I unfortunately had a little bit of an advantage in my back pocket, too, actually. One is I heard you pronounce your own name in the UK when we were at IRX together. So that's the first thing. Second of all, I lived in New Zealand. I'm actually a dual citizen, US and New Zealand, and I lived in New Zealand for almost 30 years. So I know how to pronounce Brit surnames pretty well because they're Brits are very common in New Zealand. So I had two little aces up my sleeve there.
Well done on pulling those out of your pocket. Well done. I'd forgotten that we did that talk together back in May. It seems so long ago, but yeah, that was the first time we met, which was a joy, wasn't it? So thank you.
It was, and in fact, I hadn't been exposed to your incredible work. I hadn't been exposed to you and the things you've done in our industry over the last couple of decades. I felt like I was the last one to discover you out of the entire B2B EA. It felt like everyone else knew you, everyone else raved about you, and yet that was my first time to ever meet you and even be exposed to your content. And so I feel privileged that I was finally able to connect with you.
Oh, thank you. I class myself, not intently, but as a stealth person. I'm not one of those people that are just raving about myself all the time. I'm like, just slowly, quietly delivering what I do, do a good job. And that's where my work comes from. But great to meet you. Excited to be here today.
Love it, love it. And to your point, it feels like now that I have connected with you, you are getting a little bit more comfortable with a hint of self-promotion, with a hint of, hey, this is what I do, this is how I do it, this is where I'm doing it, this is where I think I can leave my mark on the world in a positive way, bring momentum to businesses, etc. And do you think that that got a boost in terms of your desire to be a little bit more visible out there in our world from after IRX?
That's a great question. So I've been in the industry for 25 years, and I guess I'm just typically British. Don't like bragging about myself. I just do a great job, get recommendations, get clients, etc. And then when I sold my agency 3, 4 years ago to my amazing team, I just picked up work. So I'm very incredibly lucky that I've never had to go out and get work, but we have to play on the channels that we educate organizations in, and social media is one of them. And I started to do on LinkedIn this week. I booked my laptop up in, and people loved it. Even as you and I both know, Jason, people don't always click, comment, or share. But when you
Yes.
see people face to face, they go, "Oh, Lynsey, I love that you're in this place every week." And people are nosy, aren't they? They like to know where I am. And I had stopped doing it the last couple of months because I'm fully booked, which is a lovely position to be in. But people kept asking me, "Where are you?" And I was like, "I'm going to have to go back to doing it." So I started it again last week because people keep asking me, and I'm like, rather than just asking me, let me just post where I am. If you want to be nosy, if you want to see what I'm up to, that's fine. We have to stay at the forefront because although we're busy at the moment, doesn't mean we're always busy. And much like you, because I've been in the digital world for more years in it than out of it now, which is very sad. People do want to know what you do because my skill set is so broad. I can turn my hand to a lot of things because I've run a business, helped global businesses, B2B, B2C. So people are like, Lynsey, what do you actually do? So actually by telling that story, it just helps them to see what I get up to from that perspective.
And I don't know if it's been true for you as it has been for me over the last few years in particular, but I find that my most vulnerable, my most personal, basically the posts that everyone tells you you shouldn't be posting to LinkedIn with maybe a selfie because you're on a holiday in Turkey, for example. After I left IRX, we extended our trip a little bit and spent an extra month in Europe with my wife, Sarah. And always my most vulnerable, my most personal, my least businessy posts are the ones that always perform the best. Now, they may not help me land more business, but they certainly get more attention, they get more traction, they get more interest. And I feel like that's what your posts do. Like you're almost diarizing your travels, you're diarizing your trip, you're diarizing the businesses that you're helping. Obviously, without mentioning names, you're going into great detail about that blend. I think when we're consultants, I think the better consultants anyway, usually try to blend the personal and the professional in as seamless of a way as they can. And I can't, at least for me anyway, I've termed it It's not work-life balance, it's work-life integration, because that's the only way I know how to be. I can't, like, switch off and then focus 100% on my personal life ever, and I can't switch off my personal life and focus on my business life 100% ever. I don't think humans were designed to compartmentalize their life in that way. Maybe women can do it, they're multitaskers, maybe better than men, but for me, like, I have to integrate my life, otherwise I would just go batty.
Yeah. First of all, this woman cannot multitask. Maybe it's just her age now, but I can't multitask. I was saying to my husband earlier, because he works behind me sometimes, and when I'm at home, he was asking me a question. I was like, I can't multitask. I'm just concentrating on this. But what you've just shared is absolutely true. And I think what I have, people that have worked with me or engaged with me in some way know I am very, you are building a relationship with somebody and they want to know who that person is, because we're not just Jason who runs the podcast. We live, we travel, we have work life balance. And I was smiling when you were saying that, because on my LinkedIn, you will probably have seen, because I've made it pretty clear, but it's not because I'm trying to just share people what I get up to in my spare time, but I love adventure outside of work. And that I love travel and adventure. And so I incorporate that into my posts in a genuine, authentic way, because people are interested to see how people have their careers and what that looks like. And the reason I really smiled on that is because when you become a consultant, and I had the lucky position of, when I finished my work, sold my agency 3 years ago, people are like, what are you going to do? And I was like, I don't know. Well, I was headhunted by Google, headhunted by Amazon. That'll continue. People, I'll just see where life takes me. That's how I've lived my whole career. But in January this year, my birthday's on the 29th of January, and I was walking my dog, similar to you, like my brain is never fully switched off or on. I was walking my dog and I thought, what can I do for my birthday for other people? People think I only work for big global brands that have lots of money, because that's what they see. And obviously, we name drop the biggest companies in the world. Of course, you will, because people want credibility. But I was like, what can I do to help other organizations as a gift for my birthday? So I came up with this wacky idea that I would offer 4 businesses 5 hours each of my time for free as a gift. And all they had to do, so I did a little video on LinkedIn and said, all you have to do is just private message me, your company, why you think I can help you, et cetera, et cetera. Now, there was no ulterior motive there. I was not doing it for business. I was doing it for a genuine want to help of businesses that thought they might not be able to afford me, or they think I might not be able to help. And I had about 50 companies apply. And of course, being me, the very helpful person, I picked 4, but all the other ones, I still gave them 30 minutes free consultancy, because I can't just not give people things. That's just not me.
Yes.
The crux of that story was, one of the companies that applied was a travel company, travel and adventure company. And one of the reasons they applied is they were like, Lynsey, you're clearly very knowledgeable on your experience in e-commerce and marketing, etc. And we know you get travel because we see you just travel and we see you doing adventures. So we know we'll get you. I'm now an executive director of that business. I wasn't looking
Wow.
for that work. And so if you don't know what you don't know, and about being personable and without all the fluff, just genuine, being helpful, sharing examples, you don't know where it's going to take you. So there's just a bit of a random story for you linked to your point on that. And just one more point on that, actually, is I was in the car with my mum yesterday, and we were just talking about, what were we talking about? We were talking about shopping, as women often do. I hate shopping, by the way, but we were talking about shopping. And she said, oh, I'm really annoyed. I purchased something online because I got a 20% discount. I didn't like them because they were too big. I went to take them back to the physical store. They wouldn't accept it. So I had to take them all the way home, and I tried to send them back, which I could, but the return process wouldn't let me change size. It was like, you've got to send them back and then you need to order them again. And then she doesn't get the 20% off. And in my mind, I'm thinking, there is a LinkedIn post there of this company is losing money. I said to her, I was like, that company would have lost money from that whole transaction. And now they haven't won because you haven't even spent the discount, and you've cost them money, even though you've had to pay for return postage. And I was like, why are they not doing that in 2025? Yeah, there is definitely integration from that perspective.
Yeah, no question about it. And I think this goes back to what I call, you know how dogs can smell fear? I think people can smell intent. I think we're so sensitive now to marketing or advertising or thinly veiled selling through content or whatever. I think humans are so, we can sniff out BS a mile away. And I think that's just part of our biology to keep us safe. from the big bad world, but I think people can tell intent. And I know that, for example, I did one-to-one free, completely free, one-to-one. I was a mentor for a number of people over 3 years. And again, I didn't do that because, oh, I wanted the accolades, or I didn't do that because I was trying to hope that one of those people would turn into a client, or I genuinely, I've been treated very well by this industry and I wanted to help send the ladder back down again. Plus, it makes for fantastic content because I can guarantee that the questions that any one of those mentees have, that there are hundreds, potentially thousands of people out there that are going through something very similar. And if I can help them, then that means that whatever advice I'm able to give to them, it will be applicable to a broad swathe, a strata of the industry. And so I feel like it's a double win when you can turn something that you're trying to help somebody with into a more broadly educational piece of content. I think that, and that gives, that gives relevancy to what you're talking about. And I
Mm.
always like when I go and I'm speaking at a conference, or I'm on a panel, or I'm on a roundtable or whatever, I always like the Q&A part of the day the best, because that's when instead of us just pontificating from the stage about something we think is important or we think is relevant, we can guarantee it's relevant if we're answering questions directly from the audience. And so I think people can tell intent. And I think the fact that you've seen such success through a genuinely good-hearted gesture is a testament to intent. And I think you've probably borne that out through your entire career.
Yeah, I guess I have. That's how I've got where I've got. And people often say, Lynsey, how do you get to do what you're doing? And I was like, you can't shortcut it. I wanted to be in the army. I didn't even want to be in marketing, but maybe that's another podcast altogether.
Wow.
But I've just come from a genuine customer centricity obsession of, like, what does the customer want, whether that be in the business to business or business to consumer space, and just had a genuine passion for helping people. And through that's where I've had the experience of consultancy, running an agency, doing implementation, delivering training all around the world. That's people want that stuff. And someone asked me on a podcast, Matt Sykes does a podcast, Sales Cadence, and he's, Lynsey, you've written a book. I've written a book. Do we think AI is going to replace books? And I was like, Matt, let's just get this clear. AI doesn't have all the anecdotes with empathy that we have. AI can write a book on digital marketing for business to business, but the empathy and those anecdotes, which is what people want, they want you to feel the empathy and the challenges that they have. Can't do that, won't do that yet. And so I think we will be fine for a little while in terms of keynotes or consultancy or training or book writing.
Yeah, and I think, at least for me anyway, the more I use AI, and I'm using it literally every single day now, I've redirected all my Omnibox queries directly to ChatGPT with a plugin in the Brave browser, and I've done that for over a year now. So I'm using AI every single day. I continually am comparing ChatGPT and Grok and Gemini and all the rest, and using it to make me more efficient, not to replace me, but to make me more efficient. I treat it as like a junior research assistant, is how I treat it. And because in my experience, that's the level that it's at right now. Now, surely it's going to get better. But to your point, I think AI it doesn't have my lived experience inside of it. And so it's not aware of all those private conversations I've had with businesses over the last 25 years like you. It doesn't have those stories. And so therefore, for example, when I go into discovery and I can say, when they say, how do businesses normally deal with this? I was working with a company very similar to yours, and this is how they dealt with this, and this was the outcome. AI doesn't have those stories. It doesn't have those analogies. It can't connect the dots in the way that a human can, because it just doesn't have access to the raw material like we do of those person-to-person connections. So I'm not worried about that. But speaking of AI, I obviously met you through the work that the B2B EA was doing from an events perspective. But looking at your history and looking at what you've done, you've gone from, hey, look, I can help you with SEO. I can help you with B2B. I can help you with B2C. I can help you with D2C. I can help you with AI adoption. It feels like you're doing lots of things. And I wonder, so I had that similar dilemma when I first started my consultancy just over 5 years ago. I was like, do I want to just be a sort of a generic e-commerce consultant? Do I want to specialize? Do I want to niche down? Pros, cons of both approaches. And I ultimately decided, for me anyway, that niching down feels like a superpower. And I felt if I just called myself a generic e-commerce consultant, that I would get lost in a sea of sameness and red ocean competition. And so I ultimately decided to double and triple down on B2B, because I felt like I had a bit of a unique experience and skill set there. That was not common, especially 5 years ago. That was certainly not a common set of experience and skill sets to have. And so therefore I felt, man, if I really hone in on this, then it feels more blue ocean than red ocean. So I think I'll do that. And it worked out really well for me. But you've gone the opposite direction and you've said, look, here's a smorgasbord of 20 things I can help your business with. You tell me where the biggest gaps are in your business and I'll help you and I'll run at that like a bullet at a gate. How did you ultimately decide to go broad versus narrow?
That's a great question, and I'm not sure. So the agency I ran, which was set up by accident through demand when I got made redundant, when we first started, or when I first started as a freelancer, which grew into an agency, we naturally just attracted B2B and B2C organizations because in my eyes, it's still a customer, whether it's a consumer or a customer. So my obsession is with customer centricity. And through my experience of running my agency and implementing things for clients, we did B2B, B2C, we had to do strategy and then implementation. And we weren't a digital agency that just did SEO. We were quite unique in that area that we would do all of it. I could choose to pick B2B or B2C, but my gut feel was I have such an offering to offer both of them. And ultimately, as I've said already, like it's about customer centricity and the B2C. I would say B2C, and you can shut me down if you wish, Jason. I really enjoy the challenge of it's just my view, but my view is B2C is quite mature now. And so I had seen less B2C upskilling in terms of digital, and I put AI under that because it's digital transformation. They were quite mature and they're like, yeah, we've got this. And then AI comes along and I did a blog post about look in the mirror. It's just highlighted, actually, you guys don't have your foundations in place. So actually, I've got really busy doing that. But at the same time, B2B, since COVID, B2B got quite busy because COVID highlighted to them, we can't just rely on traditional marketing. It has to be customer centricity and awareness, consideration, purchase. So both of them have this roller coaster ride of busyness, and I tend to ride the wave. So if I look at my client base at the moment, some of the biggest B2B organizations in the world, thinking about customer centricity and doing programs with them. And then I've got some customers that I'm doing FMCG customers and it's digital shelf. But ultimately, Jason, here's the thing. Everything I'm teaching these organizations right now, none of it is new. It's still foundational level because I think some of them have tried to run before they can walk and they've built these foundations on quicksand and they've realized because they think they're biggest in the world, we can do this. And because they didn't invest in those foundations, there's quicksand. And so they've finally realized, even though I've been telling them for years, if I hadn't worked with them, you've got to sort these foundations out. So actually what I'm teaching people now is exactly the same, probably apart from AI, is what I was teaching people 7-8 years ago. And even some of those clients, the clients that maybe I'd taught one region, but not others, and they've come back and gone, oh, Lynsey, you were right, we need to do this. So I'm doing the same thing, but in B2B and B2C. I love B2B from a technical aspect because it can be really niche, selling widgets or all sorts of random things. And then in B2C tends to be skincare, food related products typically. And then B2B is e-commerce and lead gen stuff. So yeah, but the fundamental link is customer centricity. That is my passion and everything I do is linked to that. So if it's AI, it's like, how are we going to win more business? How can we take the bottlenecks away for the client from that side of things?
I love that. And it's interesting because I guess I expanded my offering in a slightly different way to you, which was for the first 2 years of my consultancy, I only worked with manufacturers and distributors. But then I started having platform vendors that either were in the B2B space or wanted to get into the B2B space saying, hey, we know you don't consult normally to people like us, but can you? And then I had SIs come to me and say, hey, look, we've done B2C, D2C for the last 10 years, 15 years, whatever, but we're now starting to get inquiries from B2Bs and we really don't know how to speak their language. We don't know how to pitch. We don't know how to price. We don't know what platforms we should be working on to deliver work for them. Can you come help us build our B2B practice from the ground up? Or hey, we're a startup SI. We want to be B2B like first. We want that to be a primary part of our business, but we don't know how to do that because we maybe have a retail background, for example. And then investors, same thing. They're like, hey, we know how to do due diligence on B2C and D2C businesses all day, every day. That's easy. But we don't know how to do due diligence on a B2B business. We don't know how to do due diligence on let's say they want to do a PE roll up, or let's say it's a VC investment and they're going, Lee, geez, we don't know what we bring to the table to help them grow beyond cash. And unless we can do effective due diligence on these manufacturers or distributors, and we don't know how to do that. We don't even need to know. Obviously, we know how to do a P&L. We know how to do like the basic financial engineering of the business. But when we look at, are they an advanced B2B business? Are they a leader? Are they a laggard? Where are they technically? Where are they from a process perspective? Where are they from an org design perspective? We just don't know what that looks like in the B2B world. And I added those services. And to your point, what's really interesting now is when I look back over particularly the last year, the bulk of my new clients were not manufacturers and distributors. The bulk of my clients were the adjacencies that I took on 3 years ago. And it is really exciting. And I think what that does, if I'm reading between the lines with you, is it means people like us never, ever get bored, right? Because we don't do BAU. We're not going to sit in that business forever. We are like a laser guided smart bomb versus a sledgehammer, right? We come in, we're usually brought in for a fairly discrete piece of work for a fairly discrete period of time to help them achieve a certain goal in their business. And we get in, we try to move the needle really fast in their business, and then we get out, we move on. We're kind of the typical run and gun consultant, right? You're in, you move the needle, you get out, and you don't want to hang around forever. You don't want to overstay your welcome, so to speak. And I feel like maybe that's a consultant's personality. Do you think? Because we get bored fairly easily. And so having that constant stream of new challenges, new businesses, new business models, new tech stacks, new customer cohorts, having that challenge really keeps us focused, doesn't it?
Yeah, I'd agree. My work is made up of consultancy and training, and don't tell anybody, but if I work for one business, I'm really bored of it.
Yeah.
So I love the challenge. I love the challenge of coming into a new business and unpicking the challenges and just listening. So being that sponge and understanding their business, asking some probing questions. But the bit I love is I class myself as a tour guide. Like I'm here as a tour guide to work out where they are at the moment, where they want to get to, and be the tour guide. I'm not like dragging them along. My whole pretense of working with them is them seeing the light bulb moments. I worked with a manufacturing organization last year, and this is the second cohort of training I've done for them. And when the sales and the marketing and I think it was the product service team worked together for the first time on a strategy, and they came back to a coaching session, they were like, Lynsey, we all worked together. It was such amazing. I was like, they're like, that's what I love. I don't, I'm not after that. Lynsey, you've done a great job. You've transformed our business, because I know naturally if I've done my job correctly and listened, that will have happened. That's not why I do it. The thing I love is the team I'm working with, for them to see that light bulb moment and for them to see the difference, that it's tangible for them and that I've had the impact on that business, which I love. But yeah, I would be absolutely bored. I work with big global businesses that are often like slow moving, and I love to go in, do my work, leave and go and do another challenge. That's my bag.
I oftentimes think of consultants as therapists in some respects, because we're constantly trying to work ourselves out of a job. I think the best ones are obviously, if you're a therapist and you're trying to keep your clients in therapy forever, then there's probably some sort of an ulterior motive there. But I think with consultants and the better therapists, we're constantly trying to work ourselves out of a job. We're like, I want to empower you. I want to help you develop the muscle internally to be able to do this stuff and carry on down a successful path without me being there. And so if I can come in, I can give you a blueprint, I can give you a framework to follow. I don't have any done for you services. All of my services are done with you, right? And so therefore there's no world in which they can give me a whole bunch of information. I can go beaver away in isolation and then come back with this master plan for their business. I work across mainly people, process, tech, and data. And there's no way that I can go away and beaver in silence and come back and say, here's your master plan, go away and do this. No, this is a collaborative thing. I think not only to have buy-in into what I'm positioning within the business, but to also make sure that everybody internally that needs to be on the bus is on the bus. Because at the end of the day, people don't like to be told this is what you will do. They want to be given optionality, right? Everybody in life likes optionality. That's one of the reasons why we become consultants, to have more optionality in life. And I think people are like that in their job too. They want to have agency over the outcomes of their business, right? Or their business unit or their team or their contribution. They want to have some level of agency there. And I don't know that many people that like to be micromanaged down to the individual task level. And I feel like that's our job, is to provide them a map and maybe walk with them for the first few kilometers. But then it's kind of, hey, look, this is your journey. It's not my journey. It's your journey. And if I've been, as you say, I love that term. If I'm able to be a little bit of a tour guide and put together the tour package with you and then lead you maybe through the first city, then I'll feel like I've done my job and I can walk away a very proud and happy man.
Yeah, absolutely. They have to think you're not going to get buy-in if you say this is what you've got to do, because they've often been in their business for many years. One of the companies I'm working with at the moment, and usually most of the people in their business have been in there 20 or 30 years. So they know the business inside out. I don't, I never will. It's not my job, but a fresh pair of eyes and helping them through a stage of uncertainty and growth can really help them. So you're tapping into that area of expertise, but they, as individuals, as well as the company, like, what's in it for them? Why should they buy into this? So it's their career progression, it's them investing in themselves, which in many companies now, teams are leaner than ever, companies are leaner than ever. And so it's not just taking the company on that journey, it's getting the team buy-in as well. So the team, like when I start training, I'm always like, this is about investing in yourself. And where do you want to be in 3 or 5 years' time? Do you want to be here and here? Then think about investing in yourself, and I can help you with that. I'm not just here to help the company, I'm here to help you as individuals as well.
And how often do you find that when you get in there, I've been in a situation where the CEO is in a discovery workshop and they're just watching all the subject matter experts give their feedback to you. And sometimes I've had the CEO go, really? Is that how we do that now? Like, when did that change? I didn't know we did this thing that way. And so it oftentimes will be a situation where we're shining a spotlight on their business, maybe in a new way, through a new lens, or we're asking questions maybe they've never had asked of them before. And then I feel like beyond asking questions that maybe they don't even ask themselves, I feel like, to your point, it gives them air cover to maybe do some of the things they knew that they needed to do anyway. But if they can point to a consultant and they can say, hey, look, the consultant told us that we're headed in the right direction. The consultant told us this is what we needed to do. So yeah, we should go ahead and do that thing. So sometimes they just want some validation for something that they had already planned to do anyway. And I feel like going back to that kind of almost a therapist role, we are shining a light sometimes in areas that doesn't get a lot of visibility in the business.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the value of a consultant, be that for consultancy or training, is often companies are always looking at their competitors, aren't they? They're always looking, they're doing better than us, they're doing better than us, they're doing better things than us. We don't have our stuff together. And I always say to companies, obviously I've worked with many of the largest companies in the world. And one of the first things I always say is, you're probably looking up to this company in your competition or this one. Now, I might or might not have worked with them, and obviously I wouldn't share anything confidentially. But generally, I say, look, no company has all of their stuff together. You often think they do, but they don't. I can assure you, I've worked with many of the biggest brands in the world, and you would be surprised of all the things they're unpicking from that perspective. So I think it's useful for them to have that outside perspective, because if not, they're just always, they believe what they think, don't they? And they think that company's better than us. And there was another point I was going to make, and I can't remember what it was. Oh, I know what I was going to say. So the point you made about the CEOs is a really interesting one, because whenever I do workshops or consultancy, the senior leaders are often, they're there. And sometimes, most of the time, the CEO is there, which I think is important. And subject to how open and honest that CEO is very interesting in terms of the dynamics in the room. So I've worked with companies that have been around for hundreds of years, and the CEO will walk in. And I think there's so much value in people getting together, whether that be virtually or physically. I think physically is so powerful. I did a session last week with a company in Saudi, and they invested in 3 days face-to-face, which is a huge investment in time and money. But the stuff that came out of that was really powerful. So that wouldn't have come out if we did it virtually. But back to the point you made on the CEOs. So there was this company that had been around still around hundreds of years. The CEO walked into the room, started listening, and clearly felt uncomfortable, because they thought, I'm the CEO, I should know everything, and I don't want to show my cards, because if I ask a question, it could be seen that I don't know everything. You and I both know not everyone can know everything. And so there was just this vibe in the room of like, people didn't want to be honest or open, because there was a general culture in that company of, we don't want to show our cards because it might show that we've got a weakness in a job. And the CEO didn't want to show his cards. And he ended up leaving halfway through, not because he didn't feel value in the workshop, but he fell out of his depth, but he didn't want to show his cards. Where on the flip side of that, I was with a company last week, the one in Saudi, and the CEO was there, and it was on AI. And the question I like to ask people the most is why? So why do you do that? And then we were talking about AI, because of course they want to wave a magic wand and just chuck AI tools at everything and do everyone out of jobs. And that was the pretense of what they were thinking in the widest sense of the word. And I said, okay, let's just look at a process. And one of those processes is typical in those types of organizations, the legal team and sign-off process. And I said to the CEO, I said, so what makes up your day? In front of everyone, like I got the vibe of him and I knew I could ask this question. So what makes up your day? He says, oh, I have to sign about 300 documents. I said, why do you have to sign 300 documents? He said, I don't sign them really. No, I said, do you read them all? He said, no, because if 4 people have signed them, then I know I'll just have a quick squiz over it and I'll sign it off. I said, so why are you doing that? He's like, I don't know. I was like, well, why? I said, because why do you need to sign it if 4 other people have signed it? They're accountable. AI could help with that as long as you put in the right boundaries. And I joked, I was like, see, there we are. See, you out of a job, jokingly. But he was very open and honest. And through that workshop, they were all collaborating across different teams and everyone's aiming towards the same goal, but they're very siloed. But when you bring those people together, including the CEO, and ask those questions, that why, and they're very open and honest, that's where the real value comes from.
I think a good point that you make here is the fact that transparency, radical candor, ownership, making sure that people feel like they have agency, making sure that a lot of businesses say they want to fail fast, but then they punish failure. So how can you fail fast, or how can you fail at all if you punish failure and people try to hide their failures as a result? It really, truly does come down from the very, very top, right? And all of the organizations historically over 25 years of doing this, that every single organization that I have seen excel, the modeling is done by the modeling of the behavior that we want to see across the business is done at the very highest levels of the business. To your point, if the CEO or the founder or whoever's in leadership positions in business, if they're aloof, if they're a little bit secretive, if they have a habit of covering up failures instead of exposing them and saying, hey, this is what we can learn from this, then that's the behavior that permeates right down through the whole of the company, even if individual people in individual roles would normally be very transparent. They are taught to not be transparent because of the typical behavior in the business and the penalties that go along with that. And I think that when I go in, and I'm sure you run into similar situations, oftentimes we got to work with the leadership first. We got to get them aligned, because if the leadership is not aligned, then no one else in the business could be aligned behind the leadership. It's just that simple. And the vision setting has to come from the top. Yes, delivery comes from the grassroots. Delivery comes from the trenches. Delivery comes from the people doing the doing. But if the vision is not clear and that's muddled, and the way we're going to do it is muddled, then obviously being able to disseminate that to the people that can do the doing becomes muddled. And that's when you use the word quicksand. And I feel like the quicksand scenario is actually created at the highest levels of the business to begin with.
Yeah, I think absolutely. You need to understand the vision of the company and get buy-in. But then on the flip side of that, sometimes when I work in organization, the leaders and the senior team think they know what the challenges are in the organization, but they don't. And so this is where the leaders go, oh, we can just use AI. And I'm like, how can you use AI? I chuck a load of tools at you, but it's a bit like buying a car with all the features. You never use 3/4 of them. So let's understand what the challenges are from the people that are actually doing the day-to-day work, speaking to clients, speaking to customers. And then, so you're working in this sandwich way, in a way, and that's where the real magic happens. But I think there's often these magic wands that people think you're going to appear, and that at the end of 3 days, everything's going to be fixed, which is not the case. Often it's foundation level, starting back at the foundations and thinking about customer centricity. So awareness, consideration, purchase, whether that's business to business or business to consumer. But people are always, I think, especially because they're digital, they think they can shortcut that journey and they think they can win people and get people to buy quicker, which is not the case. And to your point, I know you're focused on B2B, and I think it's a really exciting place, B2B, because there is so much maturity there to be had and upskilling, which is why I love the B2B e-commerce association. They're less digital mature for the most part. So they're like, oh, let's just be on here and people buy. If your buying cycle's 2 years, digital isn't going to shortcut that. But you just need to make sure you're there and show up. And then if they're doing RFPs or if they are ready to buy, you've already built that credibility. So there's no magic wands, no magic arts behind the scenes. But if you put in the solid work, you get the results. And that solid work comes from that transparency and company buy-in and the resources as well.
And how are you helping businesses to prevent AI becoming just another form of shadow IT? And I'll just give you one example. So when we were we had the e-commerce world in Melbourne. There was a CEO of a manufacturing company on the stage. He had his head of digital on the stage. She was basically interviewing him because he, 2 years prior, had basically gotten the mandate from the board. We're going to become an AI first business across all aspects of what we do. Basically handed that mandate and the empowerment down to head of digital, who was then tasked with bringing that to life within the business. And what they said was, look, even though we had buy-in from the board, even though we had total buy-in from the CEO, even though we had a clear vision of some of the outcomes that we wanted to achieve, when we started to actually do the doing of getting it integrated into the business, we ran into some real traditional IT problems that we've run into for years in our business, i.e., we're a Microsoft shop. So therefore, we originally wanted only Copilot to be used in our business. But then we realized, geez, okay, we've got some developers in the business and they're telling us Copilot is crap for what we need to do. And there's better tools out there to help us with code review, to help us with autocomplete, to help us do all these tasks. Oh, and then we've got the marketing department, which wants to use their tool of choice, and that ain't Copilot. So we all of a sudden had to think much more broadly about how do we want to govern AI in our business? What kind of frameworks do we want to have for adoption of AI? Test and learn, outcomes, outputs. How do we want to make sure that this doesn't become just another form of shadow IT where some businesses, they have forbidden certain LLMs, for example, maybe they've forbidden ChatGPT. So what are people doing? Or what are developers doing? They're asking questions of ChatGPT on their personal iPhone or whatever it is. Then they're getting an answer. They're copying and pasting it into an email that they send to their work email address. And then they're copying and pasting out their work email address into whatever system that they're using. It's insanity. It's absolute insanity. But I understand the dilemma that some of these businesses are in. They're like, we want to adopt AI, but how do we put any kind of guardrails around this so it just doesn't go crazy within the businesses? So they're like, we want to stay curious and we want to stay as leading edge as we can without getting burned. But we know that big projects like AI or ERP or CRM, these projects are really prone to failure. Like they're just these big, strong projects. And then the final thing that he said from the stage, and I'll get your thought, we struggled to even put together an effective POC for AI in our business as a result of that. Because then we ran into the governance thing again. Do we want to use production data? Do we want to use sample data? Like it was just a nightmare for them. And they said, and we had the mandate from the top down already. We were bought in. We were 100% bought into doing this. But when the rubber met the road, it was way harder than we thought it was going to be.
Yeah. Yeah. Similar remit to the company I was working with last week and companies I work with at the moment. They're like, we should be using AI because we want to stay ahead of the competition. We've got buy-in, but they just don't understand. They're not IT directors. They don't understand IT. And so they don't understand. There were some comments last week going, why can't we just do this and this? Because they're not IT people. See, I'm a bit like you. I come from an IT background and I know in my head, this and this talking is not necessarily a straightforward thing. So it's a real case of you have to have all the teams working together. So having company buy-in, first of all, is great because on staff retention, people think if the company's bought into AI, that's great. But on the flip side of that, I know so many people that I upskill and I hear time and time again, even if AI has been rolled out within their organization, they're fearful of it because if they're seen to use it, they think, actually, what am I doing? And the point you made earlier of AI isn't there to replace your job. It's to help you do things better. So I use AI like you. I use it every day. Doesn't mean I'm not doing my job, but it helps me do the washing up so I can do the creative stuff effectively.
Yes.
So you have to have company buy-in for that reason. And that has to be like dissembled down through the organization, but it has to be done in a controlled way in a sense of those guardrails, as you say, subject to what the country is and the AI governance within the country. But then thinking the way I always suggest is put the guardrails in place, give people the remit of, look, we're going to be doing it. These are the challenges that we have, and we really want buy-in from you. We want to do a couple of experimentations, and let's look at the low-hanging fruit where we can implement AI. But this isn't tool and then challenge. This is what challenges do we have and what tools might be best. And that's where you then build a case for IT, because the IT guys or women are getting hit left and center with, can we do this? And most IT teams are small and they've still got their day-to-day work. And AI their job is to keep the company safe. Their heads are going to roll if it's not accountable for them. So there's lots of this pulling and pushing. And there was lots of debate last week. And I had a debate today on a call. I was working with a client, the IT guys and the senior leaders. It's like push and pull. The senior leaders are holding IT accountable and the IT accountable guys are going, no, because of this reason, build a case and then we can build a case for it. So I can see there's lots of pushing and pulling going on in companies at the moment. But my best piece of advice is start really small and build cases from there, and have the overarching plan of this is where we want to get to, but be prepared that it's not going to be an easy journey. You don't want to get that distracted that actually your eye's off the ball, because it's a bit like, I'm old enough to know, and I don't think you're probably as old as me, Jason, but like when the internet first launched, people like, oh my goodness, like we don't need our salespeople anymore. We don't need brochures
Yes.
anymore. We don't need magazines anymore. We don't need events anymore. Last time I looked, there's still magazines, there's still events, there's still face-to-face meetings. It's just another tool, but people are treating it so differently, like they did when social media first came around. It's having a basic understanding and just working through it slowly. Of another bit like that car. Have a car. What features do you need? Is that feature going to help you work in that way? And obviously measure the return on investment in a sense of like time and money that you're spending. Is it worth the effort? AI can do some amazing things, but it's still way off in terms of maturity for most markets.
To your point, and I think we are of a similar vintage. I remember the days when large corporations had standardized on BlackBerry, for example, and they would use it for all internal messaging. They used it as the company issued device of choice, smart device of choice. They were using it for email. They were using it for presentations. They were using it for absolutely everything. And then the iPhone 3G came along, and people were using it, the iPhone, in their personal life. And then this whole question of BYOD came along. That was never, until the iPhone came along, that was never a question. It was like, you will use the company issued device. You will connect to a secure network that the company has set up. You will use a VPN. You will use these systems. And that is what will make us safe as a business. And then all of a sudden, Apple iPhone became just another type of shadow IT, until the IT teams wrapped their head around, oh, cool, we can integrate this into our network in this way. We can do this securely. Yes, there's some basic protocols. Yes, there's some certain things we need to put into place to lock down our internal systems and maybe make them connectable via API or whatever, but we can do this. We can achieve this. We can see a future where all these devices can live harmoniously on our internal network. Cool. And then social media came along, and then most companies, at least at the beginning, said full on social media ban for work. Full stop. We can't use it. We're not going to touch it. You can't have it on your computer. We are going to block those IP addresses. We're going to block those domains on internal networks. You are not going to even be able to log into Facebook from work. Oh, and then they realized, man, that's cutting off our nose to spite our face. There's a lot of cool marketing stuff we could do with social media, even as a B2B business. There's a lot of cool social media stuff we could do. Oh, maybe we need to have a dedicated team for social media. Oh, maybe we should actually go beyond that and create a very reasonable, workable framework for social usage at work within your role, or time spent on these platforms. We figured this stuff out before, and I feel like we're just super early in that curve of going, nope, lock it out, AI, nope, we're not going to use it. Or on the other end of the spectrum, yep, we're going to adopt it. We're going to jump in feet first, but we don't really know what that looks like yet. So I feel like we've been through these adoption curves before, and I am old enough to remember that very clearly when there was no internet. Like, I grew up in a non-internet age. I grew up then through dial-up. I then grew up with the mainstreaming of the internet and then mainlining of the internet. So we've been through these adoption curves before, haven't we?
We have, yeah. And so you and I will remember the modem dial-up, that little ding ding.
Oh, yes.
They were, whether it's the iPhone or, and in the B2B space, is often something that disrupts things. So we do the way we've always done them because that's the way we've always done them. But COVID was a massive turn in B2B, especially because we could have a whole podcast on whether you should work from home or whether you should work for office, God forbid. My company, my agency was always like, you work from wherever you like. As long as you've got the internet, do your job. I trust you. But in terms of COVID, that really dialed up the disruption in terms of B2B businesses, because traditionally they were events, face-to-face networking. Their website was a brochure at best.
Yes.
They couldn't work from home. They didn't have the servers. And so some companies weren't working for 2 or 3 months. Their staff were literally just sat at home. And I remember a few B2B companies reaching out to me, say, Lynsey, we need to upskill our team quickly because we've finally realized how important the internet is for our business. And so it's those types of disruptions, tech in some shape or form, that get people to think differently. And I think maybe because those disruptions have genuinely created big changes, people are thinking if they're not using AI, they're being left behind. But it's often we get asked, what tool should I be using? And I'm like, I can't prescribe before I know the symptoms. So what are your symptoms? And they'll go, I don't know. Well, okay, let's look at a customer journey. But people, they don't know what they don't know. And they expect you and I to go, here's all the tools. What one do you want? But here's a jewelry case of jewels. What ones do you want? But you can't wear all of them. What one's going to be best for you on the challenges that you have? And I'm learning about AI every single day. And because of the development of the tools, ChatGPT does an update. Gemini is my favorite today, but
Yes.
ChatGPT was my favorite the other week. And no doubt another one will be my favorite next week, subject to the development. So even us that work in digital, learning and changing and adapting along the way. So as long as there's change, there's always going to be adaptation. But I think as long as people have the solid foundations and they are aware, so they're like horizon scanning of what they should be doing, being that AI or where people work and what that looks like, then that's, as long as they're doing, that's a good step, I would say. It's when they're not doing that and they're like, we're fine with the biggest company in the world, that's when they start to lose market share. And that's where there's a big challenge.
And what do you say to B2B businesses, or in your case, maybe it's also B2C and D2C businesses? I've literally had manufacturers and distributors come to me who have never done e-commerce before. Maybe they've done EDI, maybe they've done punch out, but they've never had a portal. They've never done anything digitally self-service. They've never had a digital quote request system. They've never had a digital RMA system. They've never had a digital order tracking system. They've never done any of those things. They've never had a digital catalog that's exposed to their customers in any meaningful way. And then they'll say, Jason, can we use AI to just skip that step? Can we just go straight past e-commerce, and can we just do everything with AI? And it's okay. To somebody like you and me, that almost makes us chuckle. But to them, that is a super valid question, because they're going, hey, we remember when we missed the mobile bus, right? We remember when we missed the commerce bus, meaning that we weren't offering e-commerce during COVID. And so we missed out because people couldn't go knock on doors anymore. They couldn't go to the boozy lunches on a Friday. They couldn't go to the ball games on a Saturday with their clients. They couldn't do any client outreach, really, at least physically, for years during COVID. So we missed the COVID opportunity bus to digitally transform our business. We don't want to miss the AI bus. We don't want to miss the agentic commerce bus. We don't want to miss this bus, because we know this is potentially the most business threatening opportunity/challenge that we've ever seen. So can we just jump straight to the good stuff? Can we just jump straight to the AI stuff? And you miss those other things because you never, ever took a crawl, walk, run approach to anything, right? You were always reactive, always. And so how about, instead of being reactive, we become proactive for once? We chart out a path that is a crawl, walk, run path. We put the foundational stuff in place first that will have to be there anyway. Even if you're going to get the most out of AI, there's some foundational elements that are going to have to be there anyway. So why don't we do those foundational elements of work first? And here's why. And you can describe very clearly the benefits of doing that foundational work and how it's going to impact other areas of their business positively anyway. And do you get that same sense that a lot of times people think of AI as this silver bullet where they don't have to anymore do any of that hard foundational work, and they want to skip to the good bits, right?
Yeah, I think I made it earlier. Like, people think there's a magic wand that just AI, wave the magic wand.
Bring it around.
Yeah, wave the magic wand, it will come. And the point I made earlier of people think that they can shortcut things, and they can't. You can't build a business on quicksand foundations. But the point I made earlier around AI is actually highlighted to some FMCG businesses, even if they thought they were mature, and business to business ones, actually they're like, oh, AI is not generating us any business. Oh my goodness, we haven't got content. We haven't got foundations in place. So that AI mirror holding up is a good backup for what we've probably been talking about for years. We're like, don't want to say I told you, but you can't shortcut the answers here. This is where we've been telling you to build content, think about your customer journey, and show up there. And so I get that all the time. They're asking that question, like, how can we shortcut this? And they can't shortcut. You need the right team in place, the right processes, the right data. Can't build things with no data. And data is often siloed across departments, and they haven't got that one view of the customer or their systems. And so it's a real challenge for them. So actually calling some of those things out. So how can we get here if we don't have this? Oh yeah, so we need to sort that out. It's almost like you said earlier, as a therapy session of how can we go on this journey? Who is our customer? What are their wants and needs? And the other thing I mentioned to them, we've seen it more in B2C businesses, is global B2C businesses that you and I use in our bathrooms or use skincare or shampoo and stuff. They've been leading the way for years because they have massive budgets. and they could take control of ecosystems. Where when Digi came around, I call them digital native brands, where they started on social media. They then started to take market share of these big brands, yet they're still looking at the big competitors. And I would often, and still do, say to them sometimes, you're worrying about this company over here. You should be looking at this one here. Look, they're already on the shelves in retailers. They've been taking your market share because they understand the customer, and they've been very customer centric. And so again, it really shines a light on, oh, we've got a challenge. We need to sort that out. And again, that's not a quick fix. It's all down to the customer, understanding the data and the journey. And so that does shine a light on things. And it means they're then looking at AI and digital. And like I said earlier, like, digital isn't out to shortcut a system. It's just an enabler to show up where customers want to be found. And so I've seen that more in B2C, but I'm sure we'll see it in B2B as well, because there'll be digital native brands that have set up selling widgets or something. And then business like, oh, where are they selling widgets? Because the thing is, it doesn't matter if you're a startup brand or a global brand now. It doesn't matter if you're Nike, or I could set up a trainer shop tomorrow. We have exactly the same playing field. It's the tactics you play. And this is where the smaller agile brands that really understand their customer are being much more agile. And the bigger brands have often got a lot of heavy lifting in terms of tech stuff. So the tech challenges that you had, can't do that because of this, and this system won't talk to that. Where digital native brands can go, and they can sell anywhere in the world. I could set up a trainer shop today and be selling in Australia tomorrow. That's the world that we live in. But the bigger brands struggle with that because they have a lot of weight, which on one hand is good.
Momentum.
On the other hand, yeah, momentum. And often they'll say, oh, we want to be entrepreneurial now. And you can't, they'll say, oh, can you help with entrepreneurial thinking? I can, but that's just not a one webinar session.
Yeah.
That's a bit tricky. Yeah, it's interesting unpacking all of that stuff. But fundamentally, if you and I have been chatting today, there's solid foundations. Who's the customer? What are their wants and needs? What systems you have in place? Where are they showing up? That's where the tools can help, because the tools aren't out. AI is not to do things better than you. It's to help you do things better.
And how often, or have you ever gone into a new client business and had them already be very good at operationalizing voice of customer feedback? Because I have yet to be. So they might have run it as a one-off piece of work or a one-off project to go get some voice of customer, maybe do some customer interviews, maybe bring in a third party, or maybe they're just doing basic NPS or something like that. But have you ever worked with a business that was really already at an elite level at operationalizing voice of customer feedback in a 360-degree way across the business? Because in my experience, businesses, reading between the lines, sometimes I feel like they actually don't want to hear. They say they want to hear what the customer feedback is, but it's so confronting sometimes that they don't operationalize it, because it means they would have to confront their demons every single day, all the time, operationally, and then make a change off the backside of that, as opposed to just filing it away in a filing cabinet somewhere. I feel like very few businesses nailed customer centricity at being able to successfully operationalize it at scale.
I'm going into my memory bank. If you look on my LinkedIn and scroll back, there might be one or two. But no, I think that there's the smaller companies tend to be customer centric.
Yes.
There's a company I buy off for my Christmas shopping called, I think they're called Norfolk Living. I think they are customer centric, but they're a very small business. And they are now opening stores in London and places, which a lot of companies are closing stores. So that's a good sign to me that they are successful from a customer centric perspective. But in terms of global brands, none that I can think of that spring to mind.
Good. That means you and I will have work for a very long time to come. So I'm glad to hear that it's not just me that is encountering these exact same challenges within my client cohort. Now, listen, this has been a fantastic conversation. The hour has absolutely flown by. As we come down to the end of our time together, if there was, snap your fingers and you could change one thing about our industry, just broadly, the digital space or e-commerce space, or you pick the space. If you could snap your fingers and change one thing about the industries we work in, what would it be?
Or it would be wearing the customer's hat at all times, because I just feel they don't. So I would just take your brand hat off. Just take your brand hat off, put your customer shoes on. If you just put your customer shoes on, which is relatively easy, just go and stand in one of your stores for a day, or go with one of your salespeople, or look at the chats on your website. That is a simple thing you could do, and it can have such a big impact on a business. So if I could snap my fingers and say, all of you do that exponentially, that would be a big success for many businesses. But they still don't.
I love it.
But if they could do that, take it as my tip for the new year. Just do that once a day.
You would be chuffed if they would do that.
Right.
I love it. I love it. Now, what's the best way to get a hold of Lynsey Sweales? Is it LinkedIn? Is it email? Is it social? Is it where? What's the best way for people to get a hold of you if they want to talk all things digital transformation, regardless of the type of business they are?
Okay, being the customer-centric person I am, if they go to my LinkedIn, they can WhatsApp me, they can book a call with me, or if they want to email me, my email address is on there as well. So if they go there, they've got all my contact details, and they could contact me in the way that they wish to contact me that's best for them.
I love that. Eating your own dog food. That makes me very excited indeed. Now, this is the point of our conversation where I get to flip the script. I get to turn the microphone over to you. I get to let you ask me one question, any question that you like. It could be personal or professional. Lynsey Sweales, what is your question for me today?
Or with such an experienced person what can I ask you? What do you think is going to be the biggest challenge for businesses in 2026?
Look, I think I'll speak to this through the lens of B2B, mainly because that's the space I'm working in now with a total laser focus. There is already underway massive consolidation in the B2B world, and that is only going to accelerate. The bifurcation that I am seeing between leaders and laggards, that chasm, especially in the manufacturing distribution world, that chasm is growing. And I've subscribed to a number of B2B specific industry newsletters, and the amount of M&A activity I am seeing in all of these newsletters is wild. It is absolutely wild, from Home Depot doing massive acquisitions to like every kind of business you can think of across every single vertical. The gap between the leaders and the laggards is growing so fast, and AI has only accelerated the growth of that gap. And we're even seeing it in the B2B focused SI space, where the likes of Zaylab and acquiring Trellis and acquiring a couple of their competitors. Like there's like 40 major B2B focused e-commerce platforms out there today. That will not last. We've already seen massive consolidation in the B2C and D2C world from a platform perspective. We have yet to go through that radical consolidation of B2B. I think in 2 to 3 years, at least half of the major B2B platforms will be gone. They'll either be acquired, they'll be swallowed up, they'll become a subsidiary, they will just run out of runway, and investment runway, they'll just disappear. We have an accelerating pace of consolidation. And so you're either going to be the acquirer or you're going to be the acquiree. And so if you don't get your ducks in a row, to your point, there are digital natives coming to manufacturing and distribution today who do not have legacy momentum to overcome. In fact, a number of years ago, this is going back, oh gosh, it must have been 7 years ago now, even before I went independent. And I started working with a very large, they're like a $6 or $7 billion a year auto parts and heavy truck and trailer part manufacturing company. They were based out of Singapore. They did no digital, they did no e-commerce in their business at all when I got to them. They were going to do a pilot project in little old New Zealand because a digital native company came in and started operating in New Zealand. They were a pure play digital business, pure play e-commerce business. And they were doing such groundbreaking things that it was actually starting to eat their lunch in market. And they were getting more name recognition in market than this old 100-year-old business. And so they specifically set up a pilot program in one single business unit in little old New Zealand, simply because of outside competitive pressure. And it's sad that these massive behemoth businesses need that kind of pressure to think about digital, but hey, whatever it takes is what it takes. And so I think so that's the answer. And it's a very long-winded way to say, but I think we're going to continue to see accelerated M&A activity in the B2B world simply because the chasm between the leaders and the laggards is so big and growing rapidly.
Yeah, yeah. And I was nodding there because I worked with a vehicle accessory business, and they were the same. The UK team were like, we're losing market share, and they were going to go rogue and actually build their own website outside of the global team. But the global team got whiff of it, and they were like, no, actually, we want to do this globally. And although they were already the world's largest, they then maintained their market share and generated even more business because of the adoption of digital. But it took a disruption in the UK and the UK going potentially rogue that was like, oh no, we do need to look at this.
Wild, isn't it? It's wild that still happens today in 2025 and beyond. Lynsey, this has been a fantastic conversation. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. I think it's going to be massively helpful for my audience. I super appreciate your time, your wisdom, your willingness to share so openly as you have. And I cannot wait. We're going to be at B2B Commerce World next year in London. So hopefully we can catch up again when I'm there in 2026. Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome. It's lovely to meet you in May, and definitely look forward to seeing you again in the UK next year.
If you'd like to get mentored by Jason for free, head over to greenwoodconsulting.net, scroll to the bottom of the page, and click Get Mentored by Jason.